Far too often we push aside our elder voices. Even nowadays, we're being told that leaders in particular political spaces are a little bit too old. They can't lead because they're too old. But I'm somehow being pulled back to even my tradition, where a majority of the leaders are either 103, 96, 90. And I have valued what I learned from the elders as they give us the room, the younger voices to go forward. Sometimes to be young and spirited without wisdom can create chaos. And one of the things that I'm wondering is, do we need to start to have a dialogue on the importance of listening to our voices of elders, learning from them, as well as we just moving forward with the wisdom that they impart? I'm so excited to be inviting Dr. Jean Houston, who she's been a dynamite over the years, someone that I've turned to for many things. And I'm happy that, Jean, you're joining us for the Power of Woman digital conference. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit. I know it's huge, a little bit about your first 30 years. And I felt it was just important, really. I felt it was important for the younger audience to just get an idea of the depth and the magic that you've offered in the last 8 decades. But what was Jean like in the first 30 years of her life, in essence?
I was on the road all of the time. My father was a comedy writer, and he wrote the Bob Hope Show. And Bob Hope was giving his radio audiences in many, many, many different military camps. And my father thought that I should go along all the time, which I did. So I went to 20 schools before I was 12 years old. And my mother was from Sicily and was a fine Shakespearean actor. So there I was in the middle of Texas at some army camp, and my mother reciting Shakespeare, and I reciting back, "Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt, thaw and resolve itself into a dew," And my father was in the background laughing crazily, like he always did. I think one of the most important things that I learned, because I went to so many schools, 20 before I was 12 years old, all over America. And I think one of the strangest things about it was that I began to notice that if I went to a place where I knew a very vigorous young boy, and I came back maybe 2 years later, he wasn't vigorous anymore. He had faded. He was rather gray. And I would say, "Jerry, what's happened to you? What's happened?" "I don't know, just going to school, I guess. Not having any fun anymore." Whoa, I saw this played out over and over and over again. That you'd have people who were bright and shining and luminous in their spirit, these kids, and then a year or two later, they had faded. And I said, "Well, what is it, Jerry? What made it?" He said, "Going to school." And sitting in on their classes, I understood why. But it wasn't just children. I just have seen this happen so much. We come in bright, full, luminous beings, and then we begin to fade. And I said, I'm going to devote my whole life to not fading, teaching people not to fade, but also to look into the infinite varieties and vigor of their inner life, and from that inner life to create or recreate an emerging new humanity. And I was saying that at 12 years old. And it became my life, human development. But now even more urgent, human development in the light of so much social change. We have not been educated for these times. We weren't in the past, and we're not now. And so this work has taken me to, well over 100 countries I've worked in. And all manner of people to bring back the glory and what is it in Shakespeare? The glory and the freshness of the dream. What are the lines? things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the land. The worst have all conviction, and the best are filled with going away. We can't do that. We are in an evolutionary time. And when you look at evolutionary times, be it for fish or animals or anything, or trees, you find that evolutionary times are always there in times of trouble, in which a whole different platform of latent possibilities begin to rise. And I took it as my lifelong job, to knowing that I was entering this kind of time, to help people, and now it's in the hundreds of thousands all over the world, to come alive, to bring the latency of the next stage of their evolutionary journey into their life, into their work, and into their souls. Because that's where we are. We are at what I call in jump time.
Yeah, I can see that. I love your spirit. Everybody loves your spirit. I know so many young kids who can't even get out of bed. And just like, look at you, you're just like, let's roll. But how powerful of you to recognize at such a tender age that when you would go back to your old areas or old school or what have you, and you would look into the eyes of friends, kids who you knew,
Yes,
who were vibrant, had just become so dead in life. And that was back then. And now it's even a completely different glow that you see in the eyes of the children. So as we're looking at human potential, I'd love if we could establish a foundation of what exactly human potential is, recognizing that it can have somewhat of different elements for each of us, including how you rate your potential in these times. Example, my potential could be that I live in a 2-bedroom, and I never thought that I could ever live in a 2-bedroom house, and look at how great I am, versus somebody who lives in a 9-bedroom and still feels, well, I want to live in a 20-bedroom place. What is human potential, Dr. Houston? What is it?
and I prefer to be called Jean.
Okay.
Human potential is the potency which the universe invests in us to become who and what we really, really can be in the given years of our lifetime. Everybody is different in the great process of potential. Mine, for example, was to be in theater. I did a lot of theater off Broadway. It was to be a serious scholar, and above all, it was to be fascinated by everything in the world, never bored. The human heart, and to have the human heart and the human compassion operative all of the time. Now, if I look at someone else and I talk to them at some length, I discover that their potential may be to be a great evocateur of children, or to be someone who can see beneath and beyond the dread and the fear of an elder and give them back the wisdom or the affirmation of the wisdom and the depth and the sheer luminous glory of who they are as an elder. My gift is to deeply see, as I saw that boy again, and he really came alive. That's my gift. And I've buttressed it up with all kinds of science. My late husband and I had hundreds of research subjects, and we would actually find all kinds of ways of helping them come alive again. And it seemed always to work. And then the UN got hold of me and wanted me to do it in different ways with people all over the world, different countries, and to learn so much. For that, I always had to learn a lot of languages, which is my particular gift, because really, if you're going to speak heart to heart, it's a very good thing to know, Turkish or Afghanistani or whatever it is you're going to speak. So I've spent a lifetime exploring the potential. Mostly people first they meet me and they want to know, we hear that you're 86 years old but you don't look to be more than 35. And that is true. I never aged. That seemed to be part of it. I mean, my hands are the hands of a young woman. And I mean, it's just the way I am. And I didn't realize I had this potential not to age, but that's what's happening. That's what fascinates everybody. I medically study, why doesn't she age? Well, I think the reason that because although I am 85 chronologically, biologically, I'm maybe 37.
Wow. That's your mindset, though, isn't it? It's the mindset, is it not?
I think it is the mindset. And I had no concept of really dwindling away. And so I have become a piece of a study in the medical schools here because I can't age.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Be careful. L'Oreal might give you a call, They might want to bottle you up and sell you.
Oh, but right. Listen.
So why don't you tell us a moment? Tell us a moment when it was really clear to you that you had transcended institutional limitations and personal understanding. I mean, how did you know that, you could go beyond the belief systems of things and not think the way the common man thinks?
I think it is because having a very funny father who was a comedy writer, and comedy is a wonderful thing. It takes seemingly ordinary things, shakes them up, turns them inside out, and you have a new reality. So when you're hearing jokes, literally all the time, and you're seeing reality brimming with delight and curiosity, that gives you a different reality. Having a comedy writing papa, daddy, who was also lots of fun. And then a mother who was deeply serious, but always saw the best in people. Always saw the best in people. So one is this comic comedian, the other is this deep seer. But those were my parents.
Wow. So you'd say that your parents really gave you the impact of kind of transcending these limits. But what was it in your framing? Let's say, for example, for me to transcend my limits, I know I'm not the body. I know that I'm a soul. And I know that my soul has got a lot of potential and capacity, as long as it doesn't start to get attached and ego-driven. Then I started to transcend limits. Was there something specific that brought you into this mindset where you don't age, you're still bright, you're still aware and active? What was it? What is it that you're doing?
It was a fascination and dedication to spirit and the spiritual levels within myself. Also realizing that it wasn't just a question of saying some prayers, but I became a Girl Scout very early. Girl Scouting was very important to me. And in my particular troop, we were always helping people who other people threw away. And so being a scout, a Girl Scout for many years, I was always in a position of letting my spirit flow into another person and receiving theirs and honoring their spirit, which for some reason had been qualified or besmirched, and filling myself full of love and light and potency, possibility, and letting that move into the other and they into me. It wasn't always easy, but I would say that was so I was always a spiritual child.
I love that.
And an adult, I guess, I would have to say.
They've got this new practice. It's called gazing. In my tradition, we call it drishti, where when you meet a person, you focus on the energy behind your eyes, the soul. You make your connection to the divine, and then you speak to that person. It's as if you're really trying to transmit the best of who you are into that person, with the hope maybe they'll be able to send that back to you. Now, to me, that's the ultimate form of self-respect and respect for others, despite your age, despite your position, despite your gender. But there are many who speak of youth as the hope for the future. But often we see them struggle in today's fast-paced society. Is there a way that we can harness their untapped potential and redirect them towards a more positive societal change?
I think you have to hold, like you do with the eyes, you have to hold with the heart the luminous quality of their own hearts. And in that holding, something that is not magic, it's much closer to the mystic way, celebrates, and it's just, you don't have to say anything, but celebrates the beauty, the goodness, the deeper purity, the deeper soul and self. And that is who you see and who you talk to. At first, they may turn away, but after a while, they get very interested, especially if you have some humor to go along with it. I see you, you're funny, so I see you in spite of all the things you just said to me. I see you. You know, you're really a wise guy, but you're just great. Yeah, I'm not great. I'm no, you're interesting. Better than great. Yeah, you're interesting. I find you fascinating. Mm-hmm. Do you find me fascinating? No, I can't blame you. But it's that kind of delight in the fullness of the other.
Yeah. I like that. It's like I have this practice. Look at the person that you're struggling to love. Look at them like a 1-year-old. And you'll start to feel these different feelings emerge in you for them. And also for yourself. You know, it'll change the whole exchange in the relationship. I love that. You've got so much experience, Jane, with your extensive experience advising leaders, presidents, prime ministers, power hitters. You've spoken to communities globally. Have you identified any universal principle or patterns that consistently promotes human well-being?
Well, the answer is always love, isn't it?
Yeah.
It really is always love. And I find that if I can hold that, because I'm getting something else. It's a piece of a great poem. And it goes, the human heart can go to the lengths of God. Dark and cold we may be, but this is no winter now. The frozen misery of centuries cracks, breaks, begins to move. The thunder is the thunder of the flood, the flow, the upstart spring. Thank God our time is now. When wrong comes up to meet us everywhere, never to leave us, till we take the longest stride of soul folk ever took. Affairs are now soul-sized. The enterprise is exploration into God. What are you making for? It takes so many 1,000 years to wake. But shall we wake for pity's sake? Those words.
So beautiful. I miss poetry, storytelling in a way that comes from the depth of principles and ancient ideas and ancient traditions. You know, sometimes we're trying to look for the crossroads between ancient wisdom and modern technology, speed, innovativeness. And sometimes if you were to put them both together, Jean, what would it be called? Ancient wisdom, modern technology. They actually come together as one. What would you call it?
I have to think about that. Modern technology.
I just came up with that because I remembered once. Yeah, I remember this idea of like When a moment of wisdom bumps into a moment of silence, it's called experience. And I sometimes wonder, what would ancient wisdom and modern technology together be called? Be interesting. So tell me, what are some of your daily practices or routines that individuals can adopt to nurture and unlock their own latent abilities?
Well, when I wake up, I send my heart blessing to the world. That's number one. Then I walk the dog, which makes me very, very happy because I'm a big, big dog lover. And the dog looks up at me, hey, mama, let's go do this or that. And I follow the dog's wisdom. Dog's wisdom is very great. We end up in very interesting places. The other day, facing a bear lady who had a baby, I said, we're going to turn around now. We creeped way back out. And then invariably, I have many people who trying to get in touch with me one way or the other. And I try to find the most appropriate one I work with people all the time. I mean, literally all the time. So that takes a good deal of the day. And then if my housekeeper says I really should help her clean up things, I do that too. But mostly it is, what can I do today to be a servant of this world and time? Servant and service. Again, that's my old Girl Scout. Is very important to me.
Yeah, service is so important. I think in our younger generation, and for me, the younger generation is under 40. And I wonder if there is that sense of awareness of the power of service, and why being a servant in service to the bigger picture of humanity, if they've understood the power in that, and how valuable it is to live a life of purpose. Because this generation, some of the things I've observed, there's a lot of focus on the I and the me and the mine. And I'm not saying in my generation or older generation it wasn't there, but it's almost the norm. I, me, mine. I will not dim my light for you. And in the past, you'll be like, you dim your light because you're humble and they need that recognition, that acknowledgement. There's a lot of things that are breaking down, a lot of things that are changing. If you were to leave us with a key message or piece of wisdom, what would you tell the world to remember from your extensive body of work and experience?
Ultimately, we are all part of the great oneness. We are part of a unity of being. The fascinating things about the new quantum physics, which is very, very spiritual, by the way, is that everything is interlinked, connected to everything else. Occasionally, I come across a real pain in the neck. I'm sure you do too. And there's the first, but then I realized, wait. This is part of the same reality. We're sharing the same reality. We're just playing it at different levels and ventures. But to get to the ultimate unity, which again, quantum physics talks about, means everything is interconnected with everything else. And once you see it and really feel it, then you can bring in parts of your own quantum reality, compassion, deep seeing, understanding, and you shift the nonsense you were caught in, and you just send it forward. And it's not a question of whether it works or not. You don't look for that. You affirm the soul connection between you and the other or others.
Yeah, so beautiful. Why does it seem so easy for folks like us to look at the cure to society's ills, and then you turn on the new station and then you're like, what did they just do to one another? And you wonder, what is it? And it is a soul ache. There's a soul ache in humanity, and that ache isn't giving them the clarity to see how much potential they have. But there's so much hope, because I could see programs like Power of Women in this digital conference. We're really being given so many jewels for us to recognize that if you can believe and if you can start to see your greatest potential, it has to emerge. It has to manifest. It has to come to life. Dr. Jean Houston, I want to tell you thank you from the bottom of our hearts for you to join us today and share all of your insights, your lifelong dedication of understanding human potential. It just continues to inspire us all. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you, Sister Joan.
All the best.
It's a pleasure being with you. Soul pleasure. Soul pleasure. Thank you.
The theme of Power of Women embodies collaboration through edutainment across diasporas, through the collectives and alliances that support positive global change.
We have the pleasure and honor of having Julie Bergman joining us. Julie is a Hollywood studio executive, producer, filmmaker, and writer. She's a producer of feature films and documentaries, and she's an Academy Award nominee, and she's creator of groundbreaking and innovative media content across multiple platforms. Julie has traveled to the Middle East through the U.S. State Department's Vital Voice program, speaking about the impact of women, technology, new media, and storytelling at conferences in Lebanon and the United Arab Emirates. And today, Julie will be speaking on Media for the Planet, empowering environmental awareness through content. Julie, it's so lovely to have you with us. Welcome to the Power of Women Digital Conference.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. So we all know that we're living in really complicated, difficult times. And in many ways, these are moments where opportunities are rife, right? So we have to get up in the morning, we have to look at it as many challenges as we're facing. We also have opportunities for really seismic change. And to me, that the key to this for now is to be as conscious of the connections that we need to be making between the world that we live in socially, the world that we live in through education, through environmental crisis and solutions, and our connection to the earth, and the way in which those connections give us the pathway towards change. My own experience has been sort of broad. I've made a lot of feature films, but later on, I started to become really interested in environmental documentary storytelling, because I feel that we need to tell as many stories that reach us on an emotional level as we can, in order for our intellectual pursuits to have a beating heart at the center of them that drives us towards being better and making better choices, whether they're small choices or large ones. And the film that probably made the largest impact on me in terms of storytelling that I would say is the trailer that we just showed you at the beginning, which was a film that I made with His Royal Highness, the then Prince of Wales, now the King of England, who is a very, very important environmental activist, and has moved mountains literally for many, many decades. But it took me to places all over the world where there are exciting innovations happening, but also there are exciting people who are committed to telling the story of those potential seismic shifts that we as human beings really need to start to consider. And I would really urge people to start to see the connections in their own life between the food they eat, the air they breathe, the things they buy, the way in which weather patterns have finally made the front pages of the newspapers into mainstream media, where we are talking about these things in terms of climate change. But the emotional stories that lead us to change are the ones that really matter. And I think that information is good, but the heart is the thing that allows us to find our way towards change. So education is super important. I'm not saying that we don't need to educate ourselves at all. I'm really stressing the need for bold, beautiful stories. For example, I'll give you another example. I saw a movie a few years ago that I never thought that I would have a completely different perspective on the octopus. But there's this incredible movie called My Octopus Teacher, which was nominated, and I think won the Oscar that year. It's a beautiful story that, yes, it talks about the ocean and it talks about the importance of ocean life and what it's like to dive in the ocean, but it is a love story between the diver and this octopus, and you experience it through that love story. And it's so beautiful and so unexpected. And I've never looked at an octopus the same way again. And that, I think, is the central theme here, which is we have an opportunity when we tell stories, whether they're film or books or television shows, or documentaries or narratives. We have an opportunity to bring people into a world that they otherwise wouldn't necessarily experience. And through that experience, they have an opportunity to see themselves, even in an octopus. And I think that might be all I have to say.
Well, Julie, that's great. I was hoping that maybe you can speak a little bit more on your work, more some of maybe your more recent or latest projects that you're working on, that maybe our audience would be interested in finding out more about.
Well, I'm really proud of this project that I worked on with the organization Amazon Watch, and a group of us that call ourselves Artists for Amazonia. During the pandemic, we're moved to do a live stream broadcast to help raise money for the indigenous communities inside the Brazilian Amazon who were suffering greatly, as the rest of the world was as well, but they had no defenses against the virus, and the virus was brought into the Amazon by the deforestation projects and by the strip mining and all of the things that those of us who pay attention to the value of saving the Amazon rainforest understand the peril that faced these people. And, everyone was home, as we know, because everyone was on lockdown. And we had this amazing opportunity to bring musicians together, from Sting to Dave Matthews to Carlos Santana and on. And great thinkers and scientists and indigenous leaders and actors. And we created a show that was hopefully entertaining and moving, with music and actors speaking, and indigenous people live via satellite from the middle of the Amazon rainforest. And it was probably the first time that people were able to, again, everyone was experiencing the virus. It's a kind of great metaphor for what I was saying earlier. You have this kind of common experience that everyone's having. Whether it's climate change, or in this case, it was the pandemic. You have the ability as influencers, some people call them, or artists, which is what I would prefer to call them, who are willing to support the voices of the people whose stories really matter. Not only was it an opportunity for those people to talk about their plight with regard to the virus, but why the lungs of the planet, the heart of the planet, why that place in the world is so important, and why it's so important that we understand that it's not over there, that it's everywhere, that we are the Amazon and the Amazon is us. And so it was a beautiful opportunity to tell that story, sadly in the middle of a health crisis. But again, as I said at the very, very beginning, you know, challenges are opportunities for change. And we were able to really be very helpful to them, thank goodness. And that's what I try to do over and over and over again in the work that I do, is I try to find the intersection between the ideas and the issues and the stories that inform those ideas and issues, because that's where people start to really empathize, connect, and then make sure that once they're connected, then you give them an action that they can participate in, not in the sense of lecturing them, but in the sense of really giving them an opportunity to play sometimes, or to participate in an action, because once people are moved, that's the perfect moment to give them the opportunity to engage.
Absolutely. And my mind goes toward the works of the life on our planet, right? Narrated by David Attenborough, and of course your amazing films, feature films as well, that really evokes a sense of consciousness and oneness, and how we are not so separate from maybe what we're watching on TV, and that's really the power of media and entertainment and music. It's how can we gain the sense of consciousness that prompts action. And so it's truly remarkable work what you're doing, and thank you so much for coming on to this platform to share the power of film and storytelling, and
I could only somehow imagine that I found myself being born into this position for a purpose. But I started 22 years ago as something that nobody really wanted to know about, except a few people who thought it was pretty crazy.
The ozone layer, marine pollution, toxic waste, acid rain, global warming will gradually become part of our daily lives.
We used to hunt, now we fish, because there's no more land at all there. It's just open water.
This is an historic moment. Just as mankind had the power to push the world to the brink, so too do we have the power to bring it back into balance.
The only way everything can work together is if you have the circle going. Everything is connected to everything. If somebody's left out of the circle, you're not going to have harmony in all this.
Imagine a healthier, safer, economically robust world.
We can do this. We can do this, but I don't think we can do it alone. How shall we live is the question that we're trying to ask.
Remember that our children and grandchildren will ask not what our generation said, but what it did. So let us give an answer of which we can be proud.
Hello everyone, we hope that you all are enjoying the Power of Women Digital Conference. We want to hear from you and interact with you. We want your voice to be heard. And all you have to do is grab your phone, turn on your camera, and scan the QR code to participate and share your thoughts through our polling questions. And stay tuned, because later in the broadcast, we will have a digital town hall discussion on all the results. And I will let the speaker take it from here.
So I have a few questions for the audience. I have this quote right above my desk, and I look at it every day. And the quote is this: landscape is our destiny. So I wonder, what does this mean for you? Okay, so here's the next question. Greta Thunberg said, "You are never too small to make a difference." How do you relate to that in your own way? Okay, so
My
here's
other
the next
favorite
question.
quote is
Greta
from Leonard
Thunberg
Cohen.
said,
There
"There
is
is
a
never
crack
too
in
small
everything
to make a difference."
That's how the light gets in.
How do you relate to that? In
So
your own
I
way?
wonder, what do you do when you see a crack in something?
I've been thinking about lately, can't seem to turn it off. Only one that can save me is me, myself, and I. But my mother told me, if you're searching for perfection, take a look in the mirror and stare at your reflection.
I see the light in the dark and I won't let it get in my way. Hey, I don't know where I'm going, but I know I'm destined for greatness.
I'm a dream warrior, it's who I am and always been. Dream warrior, I fell down, got up again. I've been reborn, I've made amends. I conquered demons from within. Dream warrior, a dream warrior, yeah. Dream warrior. Losing isn't an option when you only got one life to live. It's a law of attraction. You get what you put in. I won the battle, won the war, so why should I surrender? I'm finally at peace now. I learned to trust myself.
I see the light in the dark and I won't let it get in my way. Yeah, I don't know where I'm going, but I know I'm destined for great. Yeah.
I'm a dream warrior. It's who I am and always been. A dream warrior. I fell down, got up again. I've been reborn, I made amends. I conquered demons from within. Dream warrior. A dream warrior.
I've been fighting for a long time. How to light my own fire, be my own cosign. Started from the bottom, not everything I do blow minds. I just need a stage and a beat, then it's go time. Did a caught a case, I just caught a blessing. Thank God I found my way, learning all these lessons, yeah. Kicking on them doors like I'm playing Tekken. You know this ain't a game, I'm the secret weapon. Yeah, I'm the secret weapon.
That's who I am and always been. A dream warrior. Fell down, got up again. I've been reborn, I made amends. I conquered demons from within. I shed my skin, I'm facing it. I finally love all that I am. Dream warrior, a dream warrior, yeah.
We have the pleasure and honor of having Jody R. Wise joining us today. Jody R. Wise is a social entrepreneur, mass consumer marketer, fundraiser, and brand expert with a special focus on the transformation of consciousness through the lens of human rights. She has a podcast, Exploring Reality, Maybe, and is the founder of COP28 Climate Mapping Summit and of Women Funding the World. And today, Jody is going to speak on abundance and conscious living and thriving, economics and balance. Jody, it's such a pleasure to have you with us today, and welcome to the Power of Women Digital Conference.
Thank you so much for inviting me here. It's such an honor and a privilege to be here. Thank you for that wonderful introduction of mine. It's been quite a long journey. I'm a social activist. And so what I do with my time is I work on projects that have an impact. And, we look at in business, we look at the P&L of a project, even in a nonprofit. we look at the P&L. But I also really care about our internal P&L along the way. So our internal profit and loss. What are we giving up of ourselves to accomplish our careers, to make money, and how are we balancing the journey between business and a personal life and a spiritual life and a creative life and all of the things that it takes to really thrive in the world. And so I've had a really spectacular career early as a sports agent at IMG, and then in my middle career, I launched a beauty brand called Peacekeeper Cosmetics, which gave donations to urgent human rights issues for women, which sold at Whole Foods, Wegmans, all over the country. And so now what I really care about is I care about the movement of capital to help the least among us and to level the playing field and to raise all boats. That's why I love Web3 and blockchain, because it's disruptive and can help all people thrive around the globe. And I also love consciousness itself. And what I mean by that is that, of course, we create our own reality. And so my question to you today is, are you really committed to living your fire, to spending your time on earth, the precious time you have here, living at the highest and most meaningful inner deep purpose? And so at times we can build an entire castle and climb to the top of it and realize that it's really not a place we want to live. And so I want to inspire you to maybe stop for a moment and explore this question of, am I living my destiny? Am I living the highest and best use of my precious time on earth? And is my North Star joy? And why does this matter, right? In a business world, and when you're trying to take care of your family and all these things, it's because I believe we can have it all. And so there's this beautiful myth. It's a Clarissa Pinkolas Estes myth from Women Who Run with the Wolves of a mythological crone named Laloba that lives in the desert. And people have seen her in the desert with the mirage heat rising up, but they can never figure out quite where she lives. And they wonder, where does this old crone lady live? And what they hear that, and the full moon, when the full moon comes up, like our blue moon that's here right now, Laloba begins to, as night comes up, collect bones. And there she is in the middle of the desert collecting the bones of a coyote. Out on the floor of the desert, she lays out first the jaw bones and the skull and the leg bones and the skeleton of the coyote's vertebra and all the way down until she has an entire coyote laid out on the sand. And then she begins to dance and sing. And you can hear, they say in the village, her singing and howling in the moonlight until these bones begin to shake. And then they dance and then they jump up, and there's Laloba under the full moonlight dancing with the skeleton coyote until the sun starts to rise, when it runs off into the distance and turns into a laughing woman or man. Now, that mythology is such a beautiful metaphor for collecting from the desert of our psyche the lost, forgotten, negated, repressed, ignored parts of ourselves that make us whole, that make us laugh, that fills us with joy. And so my work as a social activist is actually the quality of an ecstatic state in our everyday life. And so that quality of bringing ourselves into let's say a boardroom, as opposed to with our agenda and anxiety and stress, how about entering that boardroom as a trillion cells of vibrating potentiality? How about walking into that boardroom without an agenda, without worry, and living in a sort of a more precious quality without the demands of external stimuli. So I'm launching this podcast called Exploring Reality Maybe with neuroscientist Dr. Davis Schwartz to explore these questions of what is the mind, intellect, and ego. how do we create reality, and how to play with perception, identity, and the ego, because I feel that the next great accomplishment for humanity is, yes, we're going to the moon, yes, we're going to Mars, yes, we have Olympians, but actually the next great accomplishment is the mastery of the mind, intellect, and ego, is what I call a greater understanding of our internal mental domain, our mind. I call it the mastery, or the gaining some mastery over the wild stallions of the mind. And so I hope you'll join me on this journey. We're going to launch in January, this podcast. But then, I also work both individually and with organizations and movements around bringing consciousness to help the greatest numbers of people. Right now, I feel like there's an enormous risk and vulnerability to millions of people as it relates to climate. And so another piece of my passionate work is about the concept of moving capital freely, moving capital courageously, where we understand that the gift of moving more capital can protect millions of people as it relates to climate disasters and as it relates to one's own legacy. And the question becomes, how have we as a community taken a stance with our own capital to invest in and fund climate solutions and regenerative agriculture and all sorts of solutions that will help communities, that will help vulnerable people, that will help a society as we face this sort of next 6 to 10 years of climate issues. And so this is an existential issue of our generation. I hope you'll come and learn more about how you can get involved as an investor, as a philanthropic donor in this issue, around this issue. And really the heart of all of this is sort of a quality of compassion for very vulnerable people in the world. We must all come together and help those that really don't have the ability to help themselves. So those are some of the projects that I work on. And I just would like to say to you as I wrap up that I hope that you find that you're picking projects and work and the time you have here on projects that not only bring you fire, but are a legacy for yourself and your family that are deeply meaningful to you. So there you go.
Thank you, Jody. Thank you so much for sharing how we can go about the mastery of the mind. I think it's a really interesting topic. If our audiences would want to find out more, where can they go?
They can visit www.exploringrealitymaybe.org. And in the new year, I'll be teaching classes on non-dual tantra. And so non-dual tantra really is about a quality of feeling, a sensory, sensual feeling in the moment. We're sensory processors. So as our minds quiet down and our egos, we become more enlivened and expanded. And so I'll be teaching many wonderful techniques in this regard.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing and for your time, Jody. It was a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Hello, everyone. We hope that you all are enjoying the Power of Women Digital Conference. We want to hear from you and interact with you. We want your voice to be heard. And all you have to do is grab your phone, turn on your camera, and scan the QR code to participate and share your thoughts through our polling questions. And stay tuned, because later in the broadcast, we will have a digital town hall discussion on all the results. And I will let the speaker take it from here.
I have 3 questions for you. The first question is, what is your North Star motivation that just keeps you going, that is your compass? Mine is joy. I always look for it, and it is absolutely my North Star. I make my decisions from it. I choose everything to make sure joy is the clarion call. What is yours? My second question is, are you compromising your precious time here on earth for things that are not your highest calling, that are not your soul's longing, that is not what you really want to be doing with your time on earth? Give it to me. What is something that you want to do that's sort of a secret, that may be outside of the box, that may be outrageous, or it may be like a sabbatical where you just want to do something completely opposite of anything you've ever done? Come on, let's do it. Let's do it. What is that thing?
Thank you, Jody. Thank you so much.
The theme of Power of Women embodies collaboration through edutainment across diasporas through the collectives alliances that support positive global change.
Hello, my name is Boomer Rose. I'm a grateful recovering addict, formerly incarcerated, formerly homeless, and a survivor of all types of childhood trauma. I am also on the advisory board of the International Youth Conference presented by Generation Next Voice of Youth and the host of their podcast. In my day-to-day life, I work with Humanistic Technologies Incorporated as the UX UI designer. Humanistic Technologies is built with a team of social workers and education professionals, and also individuals with lived experience. We understand firsthand the challenges that face the human services industry and the individuals that we serve. Our founder has a plethora of experience dealing with real-world issues in her day-to-day job. And with that, I would like to introduce our founder of Humanistic Technologies Incorporated, Ruby Guillen.
Hi, everybody. My name's Ruby Guillen. I'm from Los Angeles, California. I'm a fatal child abuse investigator. I provide services to police, fire, EMT when children are in imminent danger. I respond to child sex trafficking, cartels, you name it, anything that a child is going through it from an imminent perspective domain. I'm the respondent. And in doing that work, I have seen children as well as women suffer under amounts of pressure, violence. And so we wanted to create change using data science, technologies, and mobile technologies as well. So I was able to look at my workload as relates to response. And so what can we do better for the safety of our children and the women that the mothers of the children? And so I presented an idea to Joseph and Boomer, how we can make children safe from the get-go. So let me introduce Joseph, my other partner.
Hi, my name is Joseph Powers. I'm a former social worker for level 12, level 14, special needs or needs children for the County of Orange. And for the past 23 years, I've been in education, looking at addressing trauma and family violence within the communities through the school system and supporting youth as they're going through their educational process. I focus on identifying needs and areas of resources and strengths within the community and within the family and within the individual to support them and help them be able to stand on their own so then they can help others. I also, with my background in education, created a program for peer mentorship to support and train others so that they can use their own lived experience. So along with Boomer and I, we were able to run a program and run training courses where individuals were able to get trained to be able to help and learn how to identify those strengths within others using empathy and their own lived experience to build hope and change.
Utilizing all of our different experiences and professional expertise and backgrounds, we have decided to come together and focus on some of our most vulnerable populations. In and of that would be child welfare and specifically child fatalities. Our group at Humanistic Technologies actually participated in a hackathon at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and we built an application that assesses child risk in real time, known as the Progressive Risk Matrix. We developed that application with the expertise of Ruby Guillen in her day-to-day job. And all of the experiences that she has seen, and with a deep understanding from our academic backgrounds and professional backgrounds that the current assessment tools that are utilized in the field do not generate the type of data that produces positive outcomes.
One thing about data, from a collections perspective, is data is collected by the federal, state, and county. In the process of collecting data, they use the data to create change in policy. The problem is, what happens if the data is wrong? What happens is the technology creates a skewed result. Then that means my workload as a response, immediate response, is skewed and does not provide me with the guidance to properly do my job. So we decided, how can we make sure that children are safe? So we looked at the standard tools being used by government agencies for the response process. We reverse engineered the mathematical computation scores, and we created our own math or our own algorithm to have a cleaner, much more fluid approach. And we are able to synthesize violence in a much more condensed and comprehensive way.
By taking that approach, we're able to now look at not only violence to children, but to individuals and to women. And by taking that deeper approach, by getting a deeper understanding, data in, data out, but if it's garbage data coming in, then any interventions, any resources, any supports that you're trying to provide are not going to be able to really hit the target, not be able to meet what's needed, as opposed to really getting an understanding. And through that algorithm, we're able to look at violence more at a deeper perspective. So besides having the broad perspective, we're having a deeper understanding, and then looking at more intimately of what that violence looks like and the impact. And through that understanding of the impact, we're able to now start perspective and generating understanding of outcomes. That's where then the work comes into looking at resources, looking at response to that violence, looking at interventions, and then eventually to prevention. But until you address intervention, you can't get to prevention.
If you look at all the research that's out there as relates to fatal child abuse and violence against women, homicides, you'll see a lot of materials based on prevention. However, where's the research for intervention? Where's the data from a granular sense of prevention from the intervention perspective? So we're trying to address that from a mobile-based technology. So we're able to create a construct that fits on your mobile phone, and you give it to first responders. As they respond in real time, they can use the mobile app to generate workloads from their perspective. And in doing so, you'll be able to capture data on the onset of violence in the response process. That creates the granularity to understand what a first responder does based on timestamps of the app itself. At the same time, agencies from the federal, state, county, and municipals will have a better understanding what resources are being consumed in real time when you're responding to violence against women and children.
And we're, talking about data. And for those of you that aren't into data, right, let's give you a real world scenario so that we can kind of understand exactly what we're talking about. A child protective services worker walks into a scene to assess risk, right? They got a call and now they've come out to see what exactly is going on in the home. Well, they walk into one house and they see an individual smoking marijuana. They walk into another house and they see an individual that has syringes and illicit narcotics laying around. Both houses have a 5-year-old child that could access these substances. With the current standard tools that are there, both of these houses are going to get assessed the same amount of risk. But we know that illicit narcotics and marijuana do not have the same risk impact to the individual using them at all. So the result of this could be the removal of the child from each home, where we know that where that marijuana was found, there is an opportunity there to educate, to provide resources, to support the parent into making the proper choices rather than removing that child, causing trauma, causing long-term negative health outcomes to that child. That's the current standard. So our application dives deeper than the current standard that is out there and really looks at the risk that is happening in real time so that first responder can make an informed decision that is not only beneficial to the child, but to the mother or to the father or to the caregiver.
Right.
That impact allows that family, given resources and supports that they actually need, to continue to maintain that relationship and the parenting skills that needed to make sure that that child is safe. Like Boomer said, it's about supporting the family. Where we are able to support, we know that a child is stronger if able in a safe way to be able to be kept in the home. Well, then that's where the child is already in the same school that they're attending. If it's a 5-year-old, they're going to preschool. That support, that network, that consistency reinforces their environment in a positive way. If it's even a little older child, same thing. If they're school age, that network of support, that's their support. Maintaining that environment for the child when safe, we're able to really reinforce that child's experiences in a positive way, getting the parents or the guardians help that they need to be able to make the changes that are appropriate when it's a low risk factor. Like Boomer was saying, when it's a high risk factor, like narcotics that are just laid around or needles, then it's a dangerous environment. That needs to be addressed immediately. Same thing with person that is actively suicidal and schizophrenic versus somebody that is experiencing postpartum depression. Yes, there's risks there, but it's a different level of risk. And the supports are different as well. And it's by accurate assessment and evaluation of those risks that we're able to apply the appropriate and proper needs for supporting the family and the child. And this all relates back to risk. And what we're talking about also relates to women and the risk that women are experiencing and exposed to and trauma that they're exposed to can be mediated when we understand what's going on in their life and the risks that are going on in their life to properly step in and support those incidents and those situations. That's where the tool really shows its value and its depth, because now we're having a more granular understanding of that one moment. Yes, a picture is just a picture, but when you put enough of them together, it makes a movie. But that one picture really does show a lot in that instance. That where that appropriate change can occur, then positive life changes can occur that really address for the entire family, not only the child, the woman, but for everyone. It does have a communal impact in a positive way, because then we're not just stretched on resources, stretched on social workers or respondents. We're able to meet the needs appropriately and go to those that are in great need and respond swiftly.
Right. There's, as I mentioned before, I respond to fatal child abuse cases. And when I respond to fatal child abuse cases, I have access to records. I have access to the environment where the child dies. Most of the time I go to the ER departments and I'm at the bedside of the child. I literally held the hand of a baby as baby's dying because of abuse. And I think back, why did this baby die? And when I look through the records, I look and I speak with first responders. I speak with everyone that ever had contact with a child. I see missed opportunities for us to do something. We have law enforcement respond. We have DMH. We have a plethora of departments and nonprofits, but we don't talk to each other. And you wonder why kids die. Because we don't communicate, we don't assess the same or standard. So what can we do to look into resolving those issues? And that's through data. That's through timestamps. That's through creating an environment where we are able to share our response mechanisms in such a way that we're able to see the gaps. Also through the data, we can show the government, whether it's the county or the local municipal, where the calls are coming from and what type of calls, so they can redistribute the resources more accurately based on the data that's being represented in real time.
And when it comes to the data that Ruby was talking about and those missed opportunities, that's the incredible thing that also happens when you start collecting the right data, is that now you can see those gaps that are being missed. And then you can create training opportunities to better inform first responders of why these gaps are occurring, right? Why unnecessary removals are happening, how we can better educate. Is it a cultural issue, right? Is it just an opportunity for education? You know, there's instances where children are spanked, and then we look at that as child abuse, right? But if you have a first generation immigrant from Latin America, where that might be more standard in the way that they parent there, that is not an immediate risk. That is an opportunity to educate and to better understand with that cultural lens. Well, right now, the data that we're collecting doesn't look at that. It doesn't look for an opportunity to educate, to better inform. It looks for an opportunity to remove and create negative multi-generational impacts. And I think back to, my son and the fact that he was removed from my care. And that's a day that I will never forget. A police officer knocking on the door, looking for a welfare check on me because my boss had called in. And, I reached out to that first responder asking for help. Yes, I have needles in this house, but that's it. I'm trying to get clean. And he arrested me and took my son away. He arrested my son's mother and took my son away. Well, that happened in 2014. 2022 is when I finally was able to reunify with my son. It was a long-term battle to overcome that outcome from that scenario, where now I look back and I see all of the signs that I was asking for and all of the opportunities for education and resources that were missed. And that's what creates a passion in me about this project and what we're trying to do. And I think to my mother's son and how she also wears that stigma that surrounds the outcome that we went through, when there was an opportunity to educate and to offer resources. And unfortunately, without those resources and without the proper education and support, I went on a long journey of addiction that lasted up until 2017. And, that's my story. But there's stories like this that are happening every day all around this country.
And around the world.
And around the world, yes.
Yeah. And how different the situation could be if the services that were being asked for were made available. Again, the greatest opportunity of change is when a person isn't asking for it, because then they're ready for at least that opportunity. That's the change that happens. It's when the person's ready for that movement, at least to try. And sometimes you try and you stumble, and you try and you stumble. But as long as you keep trying and getting up, you're eventually going to get there. And the other point that Ruby was talking about in regards to data and Boomer was talking about was that it shows us not only where the levels of service or needs are within the community, but where those service deserts are within the community. In those areas where they're not having resources or supports, so that we can transfer, move, and shift those services that we have a greater need in this area. We can provide that funding and the support over in that direction. where we're seeing that we're able to address specific needs and that they're less requested, less impacting. Well, we can shift that resource. So now we're being more fiscally responsible. Now we're being more personally responsible to those that are in need and those that are asking for help. I know children are taken away, and it's for their protection. But it's also important to look at the family as a unit to make sure we understand that protection. What are we protecting them from? And are we traumatizing them more in that process? Or by providing the right resources that are needed? And again, it goes back to data. You know, they say data doesn't lie, but it has to be good data. It has to be the correct data and the correct information that we're getting, making we're getting the right information to respond appropriately with the right resources.
Right. And as relates to the project that we're doing, it's not based on surveillance. When I talk with folks about our project, they talk about, oh, you're trying to create a surveillance app. No, it's not. One of the things is that I experienced a lot, and I continue to do so, is the parallel process of investigation. When the child is in imminent danger, or as a woman is in imminent danger because of domestic violence, law enforcement and child welfare are supposed to respond together. We're supposed to work in unison, in partnerships, and also with other agencies. But most of the time, we don't respond together. Most of the time, the law enforcement will show up first, and I show up after the fact. Or then I show up, and they show up after the fact. And the child has to be interviewed 2 times, 3 times, and tell her story over and over again to a bunch of strangers. So, and then also we have different calls. Sometimes the law enforcement will make one call, and then I make another call, and they're not in sync. So then we have discord between agencies because we have different opinions. And because we're not there at the same time, we have different results. So at the end of the day, what can we do to create a more systemic process that's more unified in such a way that we are able to respond appropriately with the appropriate services? Sometimes you need law enforcement, sometimes you don't. And so how do we make those determinations? What agencies do we need to bring in as well? Like, for example, I went to a call where I noticed there were multiple issues going on, but each issue belonged to a different agency. There was dogs that were used for fighting. That's Humane Society. There was a grandmother with bed sores. She was 65. That's senior abuse. They were using her money for drug use. That's exploitation. That's not my call. So there's an issue also with some that's violated parole. Well, that's parole. That's law enforcement. That's not my call. So the process is, how do we respond to ensure the safety of the people in our communities? Well, we can figure that out through data, because the data matrix and understanding who responds, what happened, and what time it happened, and what was the outcomes of a response. Because if we're able to tabulate our outcomes and what we did from a task-based perspective, we can literally look at, okay, what did law enforcement do at what time? What did the child welfare do at what time? And what was the outcomes of both agencies? We can see that. And you can see the gaps. You can see the response process. And then we can say, was this a holistic response? Did it bring harm to the child? Did it bring harm to the parents? Did it violate anybody's civil rights? Or what can we do better in general? This could also be used for training, because once you're able to gather information, then you can take what works and what doesn't work and package it in such a way that to train your employees. If things that work, great. Let's use what works as a manual. We can, produce a really good resource material. The things that don't work, we can use it. That also was training. Look, this is what happened because it wasn't working. This is the outcome because it wasn't working. So let's learn from these mistakes so we can be better equipped to respond to children.
And if you have a tool, imagine that we're all using a tool that, whether you're a 30-year veteran that has been out in the field and really understands the nuances when someone's communicating, or a first-time social worker going out, or firefighter, or a police officer. If we're all using the same tool that really is not dependent on their education, but on the response and what's happening in that moment, then we don't have to worry about this breakdown in regards to agencies, and one sees it one way, one sees it another, or law enforcement is really driving this because it's a child endangerment based on what they believe as opposed to what is. Or firefighters when they go out and they see it, or a new social worker, or even doctors in a hospital who they know what a broken bone looks like. They know what a spiral fracture looks like. They know what nursemaiden's elbow is. They know what these things are. But helping them understand the impact and what's happening at the time, whether it was child abuse or not, based on that deeper understanding of the situation, of the incident.
And really, with the data that's collected, from all these, various incidences, and as Ruby was highlighting the training, that's where we can, we incorporate in the application training scenarios, through, problem-based learning, where individuals that are on the application go through the case scenarios and read the facts. Look for the hypotheses, look for the hunches, right? And they answer their questions, and then they're able to see if they are on the right track or what they're missing, and they can be better informed for what that next decision might need to be. What agency do they need to respond to, refer to? And Ruby was talking about, the different agencies that, lend support and resources to the outcomes from these cases. Well, that's another area that we look at as well. We don't just focus on that initial, risk, but we also look at the agencies that lend the support and resources to the families, to the parents, and to the children. And how can we help those agencies create better outcomes? We have developed several different applications that also deal with working with the agencies and lines with case management, peer-to-peer mentorship, resource referrals. All of that also has to have data that is good coming into it to get the desired outcomes for success for the survivors, for the parents, for the individuals that might have gotten incarcerated from the incident and are re-entering society. Everywhere deserves to have good data inputs coming in so we can optimize the outcomes, not only for the agencies, but also for the individuals that we are trying to serve. What kind of support do they need? What kind of resources do they need? Are there, as Joseph said, resource deserts? Are there even resources near them? Well, this is all that we can look at with the data that we are collecting and finding throughout our various suite of technologies.
Right. One of the apps that we're also building that we have is out of Florida, has to do with restorative justice. So we looked at the markers of why people go back to jail. And we realized that it's not because they're using drugs and whatnot. I mean, there's folks that do that, of course. But we looked at the tasks that people must adhere to, and there's a high failure rate as relates to that. So we were able to look at how do we maximize the value of mobile technology to create the data flows in such a way that reduces the burdens of people that are coming out of incarceration. So we paired up with a nonprofit ETC, and they allowed us to build an app using their task-based process. And we looked at all the different paradigms. We actually met with the folks at court. And before the app, everything was done on paper. We looked at the failure rate of the clients coming in and out of the programs. And then we looked at all the variables that they collect and how they're being collected. We digitized everything for them. Wilmer, do you want to talk about the results?
Absolutely. The pilot test of this application began in January of 2022, and we're going on just over a year and a half of the pilot test going, and the results have been absolutely phenomenal. The program at any given time will have between 60 and 80 participants actively in the program and engaged on the app at any given time. In the first year and a half, we served over 250 individuals that had profiles on the applications. And with that number of individuals, we tracked over 6,000 recovery meetings. 400 employment applications, 75% of the participants became gainfully employed. And the most fascinating aspect of it is the fact that the graduation rate for the program increased by almost 50% once the app was put in place. Now, we always look for big numbers in data, right? And we want to see these big changes. But 50% is a big number. But let's look at that as the individual, right? Not just the statistic, but 50% increase amongst 250 participants. That could be 125 lives changed with a piece of technology with one program. This is a pilot program. Mm-hmm. What if we magnify that across the entire globe? Right? How many lives are we changing? Now let's look at that from a multi-generational aspect. How many lives are we changing 10 years from now, 20 years from now? How much less adverse childhood experiences are our youth facing because of the positive change that is happening from this technology? That is what blows my mind. That's what I think about. But yeah, I mean, it's an incredible piece of technology, and it really helps reduce the barriers that individuals face when they are re-entering from incarceration.
Another interesting fact that came out by really looking at the program and the process that we did not anticipate was that the participants we looked at prior to starting digitizing the program and helping them and really putting in mechanisms that really reinforced the participants' choice to be successful. And that we found that even participants before that would normally fail out at a certain level at phase 1 or just before phase 2 were actually making it twice as far. So those that failed out, they weren't ready yet. And that's okay. Not everybody's ready. Again, sometimes we stumble and then we get up and then we keep going. But we found that those that were stumbling were able to go further before they were not able to continue in the program. And so that was a win for them, that they were able to say, at least I got this far. I'm not done yet, but at least I made it this far. Where before they would have been very negative on themselves and say, well, I blew out right from the beginning. That's a win too. And like Boomer was saying, when you're dealing with trauma, there is a multi-generational effect of trauma. And by whether it's domestic violence, whether it's substance abuse, whether it's poverty, whether it's exposure within the community to certain events, trauma does affect everyone, and especially the youth. And if we're able to help minimize that impact by helping people be successful, then that multi-generational impact does get less. And in time, you can shave it down by that onward movement forward of reinforcement through positive experiences instead of those negative experiences. Those adverse childhood experiences, ACE scores, they need to be offset by PACEs, by positive experiences. And it takes about 10 to 1 to really start to impact that. But it is possible. Change is possible with the right process and with the right training and the communal response. It takes a village to raise a child. I say we bring the village back together. We use that as a support. And that's the anchor that everybody is able to pivot from and know where to come back to. And that's where they grow from.
We, from the perspective of our company, what we're doing, we like when people say no to us, because their no becomes our opportunity to show them that what's possible. And then, 3 months, 6 months later, we show up and say, look, we're going to show you that it's possible. and we show them the data, we show them the app, we show them the flow charts, and then they look at us and how did you pull it off? It's because we're not talking about money. We're not using technology as an end-all per se. We talk about from a personal experience, empowerment perspective, advocacy perspective, and we put the child, the families, the crisis first, and reverse engineer that. So how do we look at the violence from a granular perspective and wrap technology around that so that we have a better understanding? So once we understand that, then we can employ the first responders mechanisms and the resources to bring everything forward. So when the next scene, a next child comes rolling by, another family is in crisis, we learn from our prior experiences. We create baselines based on the old data, and then we watch it again to see what happens. We trail it, we examine it, we analyze it. We pivot to the left, we pivot to the right. But we are always engaging with our clients. We always engaging with the agencies to see whether or not what we're doing is on target.
There's always going to be a challenge in regards to resources and support. And I know there's a shortage in social workers and there's shortage everywhere. And workloads are high. But we got to make sure that we're human beings, not just human doings. Bring back the human element. Bring back that person. If we're making decisions based off the individual and our responses in technology, so if we're technology-driven decision-making, where it's for the individual, then we're going to be able to make an impact. And that's where policy change comes from. And that's where really that long-term and widespread change. Because then it's just not that one little group that's doing it. And it's a community that's doing it and showing the outcome and showing the effectiveness of it and the efficacy of it and the positive outcomes that are possible when working together. And then you have change.
Right.
Absolutely. And Ruby said, technology is not the end all be all. And it's not. The technology that is, there's a million people in the world that can develop technology, that can build mobile apps, that can develop programs. But what sets us apart at Humanistic Technologies is our professional experience, is our personal experiences, is our lived experiences, and our academic backgrounds. That's how we develop technology, with a deep-rooted understanding of the emotions and the barriers that individuals are facing in real time at that moment. Whether that individual is, the client, or whether that individual is with the government agency or organization. We understand all ends of the spectrum. And that's what really sets our technology apart. It's user-friendly. It's user-driven. The clients and the participants have the choice to use our applications. They have the choice to put their data in there. They have the choice to get the outcomes and results and resources that they need. But ultimately, it is their choice. And that choice helps to empower that individual to be more. Joseph said, let's bring the community back together. Let's bring the village back together. Well, I feel like us at Humanistic Technologies, we're doing that through technology. Because sometimes, addiction, trauma is often the disease or an issue of isolation. And it creates the inability to form long-lasting relationships because you don't have that trust. You can barely trust yourself. Well, the technology can become your community if it's built by individuals that understand the trauma and the decision-making and the barriers that individual is facing. So, that's what I think sets our technology apart. We're not just a technology company. We are a company that focuses on individuals and people and empowering them to be whatever they dream of being. I often say, shoot for the stars and hope that you land on the moon. Well, that's what we want every individual that touches our technology to do, to shoot for their dreams, to be more. And I'm, honored to have had the ability to learn from Ruby and Joseph over the past 2.5 years since I've known them. And that's what I hope that this technology can create for other individuals, because I am that individual. And all that I needed was an opportunity and someone to see something in me that I did not see in myself and that I never thought that I could be. And every individual deserves that chance and that opportunity. And that's what we hope that our technology can give them, the opportunity to move forward.
We aspire to change our clients through their own voice. And one thing about some of these agencies, some of these clients feel like they're forced to do things because they have to. We want to make sure that they have the choice to do so. If they choose not to, that's their choice. Mm-hmm. We have to honor that. We have to respect that. So at the same time, you have to also give an allowance for the agency to do what they do, but also empower the agency to partner with other agencies in such a way that they see another agency coming into play and they are able to align themselves based on the current circumstance. They could either join an alliance or pull away. With data, they'll know exactly, not exactly per se, but they'll be able to see what's the most opportune time for them to engage. And so from the data's perspective, we're trying to figure out from the systemic perspective, from the community level, from the family's perspective, what do the families need, to the individual level, what does that individual, what are they seeking? What are their constructs from a task-based perspective, governed by maybe probation, maybe it's child welfare, but they have and they have access to knowledge and information for them to make choices, their own choices, so they can succeed with their own governance.
That's where change comes from. We like to say that we're recipient-driven technologies because it's for the recipient. It's for them to use. And like Ruby said, if they choose to, they always have a choice. We always have a choice. We can stand and stay where we're at or move forward. But you have to respect that choice. Making somebody, you can put somebody someplace. Doesn't mean that they're changing from being there. Doesn't mean they're gaining anything from being there. They may be gaining, but not in the right direction or the things that you want them to learn, that they need to learn, that they want to learn. We can all make change. It just starts one situation at a time. And then we're able to model like that change action for our families, for our children, for our communities. There's hope.
Absolutely. There is hope in anything you do. So we have a project out of Florida, and based on the success of the project, we are now launching that project in California. We also reached out to other states, to other leadership and agencies. We have the data, we have projects that we're able to showcase. At the end of the day, it's not about the tech, it's not about the showcasing of the data. How do we empower someone? What are the mechanisms to really drive change in such a way that people don't feel powerless? We can reduce the burdens of being vulnerable. And so, I'm passionate about how do we use data science and technology and mobile technology to really create the beacon of hope. I mean, there is avenues for that. And so we are constantly looking for that level of granular experiences. And we do that every day, because at the end of the, I know for myself, all of us are going to expire, so to speak. I want to be remembered that I cared, and every day I focus on the change, and what can I do to inspire and to continue making change for the most vulnerable populations. And for me, that's for change for children.
Who did you help today? Yeah.
And are you a better person today than you were yesterday? Are you growing? And can we provide that growth to others through technology? because that's what we're built to do. We're built to grow. We're not built to wither away and wilt. We're built to grow. So how can we create change to where technology can be the water that we sprinkle on these little seedlings and watch them grow into big redwoods, right? That's what we want to create, is a field of redwoods that will stand forever and stand through the test of time.
Right. It might seem kind of like a cliche, but we really believe in our work. We really do. We really want to inspire people. We want to provide hope. We want to create avenues where people could access technology to be able to access safe spaces for themselves and their families. We really believe in the action of hope and empowerment process and advocacy. So we look at technology from that lens and that perspective, and that drives us every single day.
Sometimes it's just looking at that little win. For somebody that's really depressed, getting up and just getting a shower, taking a shower that day, that's a win. Celebrating those wins, recognizing that that's success. You're not done. That's not where they want to end up, but that is another step. And with every step, you get closer.
And that's what we do. That's my team. It's Joseph, Boomer, and I. We focus on those wins, and we focus on the wins through technology and data science.
And we all we're done.
Yeah.
Good. That was good.
Yeah.
Today, we have the pleasure of having Jessica Zwei joining us today. Jessica is the CEO and founder of Simply Be, a premier personal branding company that transforms corporate teams, executives, spiritual teachers, and entrepreneurs into recognized industry experts and thought leaders. Jessica is also the author of the best-selling book, Be, a no bullshit guide to increasing your self-worth and your net worth by simply being yourself, and the host of top-ranked podcast Simply Be. Today, Jessica will be speaking to us about prosperity and the return to the feminine frequency. Hi, Jessica. Welcome to the Power of Women Digital Conference. It's so nice to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. This is such an honor to be here. I want us to imagine a world where women held every CEO position across every company, in every country, on every continent. And all of their executive teams were women too. I want us to imagine a world where every government official position across every country and each continent was held by women, and all of their cabinets were comprised of women. I want us to imagine a world where every scientist, doctor, researcher, inventor, and innovator were women. I want us to imagine a world where every building ever constructed was designed, architected, and built by women. I want us to imagine a world where every farm was led by women who harvested the crops and raised the animals and cultivated the produce and tended to the land. I want us to imagine a world where every major religious service was led by a woman. I want us to imagine a world where every major sports team was comprised of women and the men were the cheerleaders. Now, I know that this might sound fantastical, unrealistic, and maybe even a bit wild when we think about it. But for a long time, and when I say a long time, I mean hundreds of thousands of years. This was essentially how society was constructed. We lived within a matriarchy. Matriarchal goddesses and their cultures led civilization. They exalted the cultivation of food, agricultural knowledge of herbs, plants, and other natural healing modalities. This was a culture that invented writing, the arts, weaving, textiles, pottery, and the very foundations of civilization itself. Their societies honored animals, honed complex mathematical systems, advanced astronomy, and were the keepers of story, sacred rites, and maintained temples of worship that honored the sacred in all living things. In research, these communities, they've found that there have been no weapons ever to be unearthed, no defensive earthworks found, and there is no evidence of an oppressive, ruling hierarchy or social conflict. But in the last 4,000 years, things changed. The patriarchy was born. Most of our modern day historical teachings and understandings have been written through the lens of the patriarchal masculine, depicting the forming of the world as we all know it today, one that was formed based on religion, recorded war, and the declarations over land and territory. Looking objectively at this historical text recounting the hundreds of marquee events that took place during these ages, you'll see repeated words like civil war, domination, assassinations, conquest, defeats, victories, attacks, persecution, construction, destruction, secession, reign, and rulership. Now, examining all of these words, we can easily see that they don't only characterize history, but our present-day reality. The things that I speak of are not folklore. This is in our DNA as women. And when we simply objectively look at the timeline, what do you think holds more biological weight in how humans evolved? 4,000 years versus 300,000 years versus 4 billion years, which is the age of the earth. What truly defines our true nature? Historical and religious books written by men, or the civilizations of eons who lived in harmony with the planet? And yet the idea that God was in fact a female since the dawn of civilization might seem impossible to fathom for many of us. But to believe otherwise is our deepest psychological and physiological programming. The patriarchal system of control, supremacy, linear time, separatism, and power, it's so woven into our conditioned consciousness. I say it's like vitamin C in the orange juice. We don't even notice that it's there. It was certainly woven into mine. For the majority of my career up until recently, I played by those rules of the patriarchy. I started a multi-7-figure business, Simply Be Agency, from net negative $0 to now an internationally recognized 30-person full-time team with hundreds of clients across the globe. We wrote a best-selling book, have a #1 ranked podcast. And for a very, very long time, most of my life, I believed that as a woman, because I was a woman, I had to hustle to prove my worth, to overextend myself, to not just thrive, but to simply keep up. And all of that grinding and all of that proving and all of that hustling led me to the winter of 2022, where I reached full-on physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual burnout, to the point where I couldn't leave my house for months at a time. And that's when I really, for the first time in my life, had to examine how hooked in I was to the patriarchal system that was diminishing my innate feminine value. And I've been on a deep healing journey to not only look at my own habits of hustle, but at the world around me and how this society has been designed for me to do just that, to kill myself to keep up. But there is a return. I felt this within myself. I see it around my peers. I see it in the feminine collective. This awakening to the mother goddess within all of us. And it starts with each and every one of us individually, regardless of age, stage in our career, title, socioeconomic status, religion, or otherwise. The feminine has been suppressed. It has been oppressed. It has been rewritten, and it has been forgotten. But this is our time to remember. This is our time to reclaim our true power, to allow for the feminine frequency to rise again in the way that we live, work, and lead. We are now being called to a more gentler, harmonious way of living and being. The time is now to help restore this planet to its original state of the goddess's values, of harmony, reciprocity, oneness, and love. And sure, this might sound all beautiful and grandiose, but kind of a big task, right? So where do we start? Does it start in our businesses? Does it start in our communities? Does it even start with our families? The answer is no. It starts with us. How we tend to our bodies, how we remember that our bodies are a piece of the great mother and the great goddess herself. To be gentler, softer, more in tune with our own rhythms. To embrace slowing down, to embrace turning it off, to embrace tuning it out, to tune in, so that we can find our own truth, where we can navigate our lives and our work and our careers, not based on what everyone else is doing and the vibration of the speed of which most of society demands of us, especially as women, but what feels good and right to us. That's what I had to do. I took a deep, long journey within myself, those few months through my depression and seeking help and slowing down and deleting Instagram and hiring a coach and traveling a bit and disconnecting and unhooking from the programming. And on the other side, not only have I healed, I've healed my business, I've healed my team, I've healed my relationships, and I'm doing better work for my clients and community in the end. This is a time to channel the power of the goddess, to rise in that feminine frequency, to bring that power into not only our businesses and our careers and how we choose to lead them, but our communities and how we choose to care for them, our families and how we choose to nurture them, our industries and networks and how we choose to unapologetically value the feminine in front of them and take a stand for a more loving and inclusive and gentler way. To own and to reclaim and to recall our power and leadership as women means that there can be a world where women are the CEOs and the doctors and the scientists and the government officials and the farmers and the builders and the athletes and the religious leaders. And that this isn't a world of our imagination, but of our reality. But it starts with us. It starts with us remembering so that we can rise again.
Wow. Thank you, Jessica. Everything you shared is so important and crucial. A world with more women representation. Thank you so much for your insights, sharing your story, and for pointing to a collective phenomena that is this feminine frequency rising. It was such a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me and letting me share this message.
Hello, everyone. I am thrilled to introduce our next speaker. He's known as the #1 Hollywood International Acting and Success Trainer. He has created successful movie and TV stars around the world, and he's also a leader in the field of public speaking and personal transformation. His revolutionary methods have produced unprecedented results, and his techniques have elevated the careers of CEOs, sports athletes, business leaders, and entrepreneurs globally. His mission is to teach how to live an Oscar-winning life by discovering the star quality that lives within all of us. Bernie, please welcome to the Power of Women Digital Conference.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here.
Thank you. So I have a couple of questions for you.
Cool.
Yes, let's see. We are all playing a role, one or another in our life. So please share your insights on how can we live the greatest role in our life.
Well, first of all the world is a stage, which means that every single one of us is playing a part in our lives. We go from, it's something we play actually as a child. We play like cowboys and Indians and princesses. We learn to play roles. Society demands that we play parts. And when you grow up, you play a boyfriend, a girlfriend, you play a husband and wife, a lover, all these different roles. And what I talk about is that we can choose to play any role we want in a more powerful way, because the roles that we've been given as a man or a woman is always stereotypes, limiting roles. And like an actor, which is what I work with, we're all playing roles. You can play dynamic parts, because every one of us chooses what kind of roles we play. We also are the writer, the director, the producer of our own lives. And we can accomplish anything we want if we decide to not play the role that we've been given, but actually play the role that is deep inside us and to play the greatest part in our lives.
Wow, I think that's so insightful. You know, I love talking to you because you always have some of the greatest gems to share with all of us, always.
Thank you.
Bernie, I mean, it's true. We are all playing a gender role, whether we like it or not. We are assigned at birth on our sex. Right. And then we play the role of a mother, a daughter, a son, a husband, a father. Right. I mean, what you just said, what is that role that's deep within you? And that's important.
Well, the idea is that not only are we playing roles, but we're also playing a part like in a movie. The question is, the part you're playing in a movie, what kind of movie are you in? Are you in a comedy, a drama, a mystery, a romance? What kind of a role are you playing and what kind of movie are you playing? And what is interesting right now is that we can break the boundaries for a man or a woman and decide, I want to play a stronger, a more powerful role. But you have to be willing to become unpopular, and you have to be willing to become vulnerable. See, the idea is that the bigger the roles we play, the more attention we get. And we sort of go through stages. Whenever you try to do something differently, people look at you and go, hey, how come you're not playing the roles that you've been given? And I'm saying, break those roles, play the hardest roles, but it's something that you have to feel. And it's also something that, you know, like successful people always ask for help. They ask people that I'm a mentor. You need to have a mentor to help you play a more powerful role in what I call, would you win an Oscar for the way you've lived your life? What I want is that by the end of your life, that you would give an Oscar for how you lived your life. And by the way, life is difficult. I happen to know some Oscar winners, and the people who win Oscars, it's always a difficult part. It's not about two people shopping. It's about someone going through the ups and downs, but how they deal with it. Also think, how would an Oscar winner, how would an Olympic champion deal with certain issues, certain problems? And that's what I want you to think about. I think that we are, each one of us, everything we do, say, and act is the artistic legacy we leave behind. And we have to realize that life is tough. Be tougher. Recognize that you can break boundaries. And for women, there have been prime ministers, there have been presidents. It's endless. Do not ever take the role that's been given, because either you're going to play the starring role in your life or you're going to play an extra in somebody else's life. And that's what life is. Life is always making you play small roles, tiny roles, because you don't want to, well, here's the thing. I always talk about, as a child, what did you need to do to be loved as a kid? And some people say, well, I had to play this role and that role. And after a while, they think that's the role they need to play, because as a child, we play roles because we want attention and we want love. But realize that hopefully I'm not speaking to children. I'm speaking to adults. And when you're an adult, you need to choose your own role. You need to think, I can redesign myself. And you have to think, what kind of a person would I need to be to achieve what I want? I don't want to talk about dreams. I don't want to talk about the end result. I want to talk about what kind of a person would you need to be? And if you wanted to be a powerful person, think, what would I need to do to prove to myself that I'm powerful? If you wanted to be a sexy person, think, what would I need to do? Because the most important relationship is between you, and everything is endless. And if you don't play the big part, you're going to be really sad. In the world just teaches you to be small, to be tiny, and we've been assigned roles to play. And I'm saying, forget that. Stop trying to be popular. Be memorable. Do something that people will say, wow. Do a wow. That's what I'm talking about.
Wow, indeed. Wow, indeed, Bernie. I was going to ask you, what does it mean to live an Oscar-winning life? I think you answered before I could even ask you the question.
Well, no, the idea is that, I talk about that in my courses, where I think that we need to live a life at the highest level. An Oscar-winning life is that where you live a life of integrity. How you do one thing is how you do everything. I always say that if you work on your job, you'll make a living. But if you work on yourself, you'll make a fortune. I want you to invest time and energy on you. There's nothing wrong. And by the way, success leaves clues. You need to know how to be successful. You need to know how to do that. But remember, the bigger the spotlight, the more you're looked at. Because the secret, don't tell anybody, the secret of total success is wanting to take risks and be vulnerable. Vulnerable is the most important thing. If you're vulnerable, you take risks, and then great things happen. If you're ever wondering what your future is going to be like, it's easy. Create it. That's how the future is. Create your own future. Don't wait for people to tell you who you are. Discover who you are. Spend time with yourself. And most importantly, use love. Have the courage to love yourself. Because I want you to love your problems. I want you to love your difficulties. I want you to realize that love is the most important thing. Love is our problem, and love is the answer. Be nice to yourself. Learn how to speak to yourself. Don't criticize yourself. That's not going to help. Realize that you are not bound by anybody. There are no boundaries, because people are breaking them, and that's what you need to be. And why not? Remember, is anybody living the life you want? Anybody? And the answer is yes. Then why not you? Why can't you live the life that? And that's because you need to have the courage, because successful people always ask for help. Average people never do. You need to realize that these things can be yours if you have the courage to stand up, to be unpopular, but to be authentic. And you'll know when you're authentic. Authentic people are connected to their power. They're happy. They have no trouble expressing their emotions, and they speak the truth with love. And most importantly, someone's authentic shows their soul to the world. Show yourself. And one of the other little secrets is whatever you hate about yourself, that's usually your gifts. The things you don't like, that's what makes you great. That's the secret. A lot of people have been bullied. Usually the most successful people are bullied because they just won't conform. We live in a world of conformity. Just fit in, play the roles, don't do that. I'm saying don't do that anymore. Have the courage to see how far your life can take you. Live at the highest level. You'll see you'll be happier. Why not? Stop suffering. No one's impressed with your suffering. Don't be in pain. Remember, whenever you're in pain, that means something has to change. Don't be have low tolerance for pain. Recognize that as a woman, there is nothing you can't do, and you need to think that. And if you can think that, you have to implement that. You need to take actions to make that happen. You need to ask for help. You need to start playing a different role in life. Think of yourself as a winner. Here's the difference between a winner. Let's say you've lost your boyfriend, you don't have a house, and you don't have a car. You can still react in a positive way because three things make us who we are. The way we think, the way we act, and the way we react. That's what makes it different. And I know that it's greater on the top. Don't compromise. Be you, because everyone else is taken.
Oh, wow, Bernie. What a beautiful, insightful piece that you just shared, And I think it's just listening to you, I just was thinking, this is so true. Integrity is such a crucial point. And then love is the answer at the end of the day. And
how much you love yourself is how much you're willing to do for yourself. So the people that I work with, I've helped them discover the love for themselves. Because you need to love the way if you want to know what heaven feels like, love yourself right now exactly how you are. That's what heaven feels like. There you go. You disappeared. There you are. Okay.
I'm back.
And you're back, and you're, remember, the part that you were likely given is a part you were given in childhood. And it's locked in by your friends and family and society that want you to play a certain part. But the idea is that, why don't you play a part you want? And if you don't know how to play that part, then you need to learn. Sometimes I say, if you want to feel confident, by the way, a lot of people want to feel confidence. And confidence you only get by doing something that scares you. In my classes, I try to make people do things that scare them, like sing, dance, do stand-up comedy. Do something that scares you. That's how you get confidence. You can't get confidence by just thinking about it. It's action. Because I feel that the people I'm talking to, you don't need any more information. You need transformation. You guys know what it is. I want you to play life like as smart as you are. Because if you're listening to this, I know you're a genius. Start acting like a genius.
Bernie, this is so beautiful. And I just dropped my camera. You were saying to be vulnerable. I think I'm leaving it right on to the point.
Well, no, the idea is, go ahead. Vulnerability is the key, because when you reach out and you're trying to meet someone, vulnerability is what we look for. There's a saying which vulnerability is the first thing we look for and the last thing you show. But vulnerability attracts you. And by the way, if you want to be successful, you've got to be a magnet. You need to have a personality that you infect other people with, that they can't wait to be with you, because success is attracted by the person you are. It's not actually something you can't pursue success. It comes back to you, your energy, your quality. Something in Hollywood that I love, which helped me because I started becoming successful because of this one saying. And they said, if it's not who you know in Hollywood, but it's who would know you. Who wants to know you? And that's the most important thing. And that's for business. That's for anything. Everything is based on that, of having a great energy and a positivity. And the most important thing, if you want to be successful, is what value are you bringing? You have to bring value. When they meet you, you have to make their lives. And once you're sensitive, you're aware that every single person, including you, needs energy, needs positivity. You have to be able to read people and say, you know what, they need something. So give, because the more you give, the more you get. Doesn't get better than that.
Wow. Thank you so much, Bernie, for being here today. And I want to mention, Bernie has the support of not just anybody like Leonardo DiCaprio, Samuel L. Jackson, Cameron Diaz. I think even so many to name. You have worked with many as well, and your insight is valuable. Thank you so much, Bernard Hiller, for being with us today and gracing us with your presence at the Power of Women Digital Conference.
Absolutely. And remember, the bigger the dream, the better the life.
Hi, everyone. I hope that you're all enjoying our programming for today. Lots of incredible information and insights. I hope that you're all and I will invite you to take information that we have reviewed today. And right after the 30-minute break, we're actually going to open up a Zoom room so that we can engage in a discussion. So I want to invite all of you to join in into the Zoom room. And we have the Zoom link in actually on our website. So if you go to www.powerofwomen.info, you'll find the Zoom link. And I'll also send an email out so that you have it with you. But it would be great to have you participate in the discussion. We'll also review the polling that we've been engaged in throughout the conference. So I hope to see you there, and thank you. Participate in the discussion. We'll also review the polling that we've been engaged in throughout the conference. So I hope to see you there, and thank you. With the Zoom link. And then after that, we're going to jump